I'm Carol Gaskell, CEO and founder of Full Potential Group. And so I'm delighted you can join us for this first webinar, Working Successfully in Isolation. Now, isolation is a strange word, isn't it? Because maybe until the last few weeks, people were less aware of what we mean by isolation. And now many of us are isolated in our homes. And it's easy to say, you know, for some people, isolation in their homes is by themselves. For others, it's actually with their colleagues and with other people. And what I want to do today is just spend this session thinking about how you can use this to your advantage. Now, I appreciate for many people there's lots of challenges in the current situation, so I'm not trying to make light of the challenges. And I know there's been lots of talk about the practical things that we can do in terms of isolation, checking our Wi-Fi, making sure that we've got internet connections and that we've got the hardware and the software we need, that we manage our families, our pets, etc., that we have the right space to be working from. But what I want to do in this session is focus much more on the mental and emotional strategies that you can use and help your colleagues to use to work successfully in isolation. I'm happy for this to be an interactive webinar, and please feel free to put chat in a chat box, and we will have sort of questions and answers at the end as well. But what I would like to focus on in terms of how can we be successful in these times is 5 key aspects. And what we're going to look at is the importance of knowing yourself, because ultimately we can't control the unprecedented things that are going on around us. But one thing we can control to a certain degree is ourselves. So I'm going to focus on how can you support and build your own self-knowledge in this time. Because if you look at the opportunities that are presented here, we've all got opportunities to get to know ourselves even more. I'm also going to focus very importantly on our attitude. Attitude is key right now. Attitude, who you are as a leader, who you are as a family member, but how you're actually approaching this situation will have a huge impact on your ability to be successful or not in managing isolation. I'm also going to touch lightly on your brain power. We have got a separate webinar on this later on in the series, but I think it's useful to explain some aspects of how you can use your brain to work for you right now while you're feeling more isolated and working from home, as most people are. I know it's not for everybody. Also importantly is knowing your personality, because we're not fully isolated. Many of us are still connecting maybe even more than ever through various means of Wi-Fi and connectivity. And part of this challenge of working successfully in isolation is having a balance between being connected to ourselves, but also how do we connect with our businesses, with our communities, with our clients, with our customers, and how do we create that healthy balance. And understanding your personality and also your motivation and what drives you and what gives you energy, I think will have a serious impact on how you can manage and not just develop and support yourself during this time, but how you can support the people that connect with you, your teams, your families and your communities. So starting with know yourself. I think during this time, if we're to do one thing really well, it would be to know yourself and to help those around you know themselves. Because each of us is going to have our unique strategies for how working in these unprecedented times is going to be for us. So this is an opportunity in the next few minutes that we've got together to take a deeper dive into what knowing yourself really means and how do you get personally that healthy balance between independence and connection. Some people might have meditation or mindfulness practices to really think about themselves, and I would strongly recommend, if some of you want to do this, is have a mindfulness practice first thing in the morning to give yourself a bit of space, a bit of quietness to go within. Now, ideally, and I know for myself, I try and stick with 24 minutes, which is quite a special number for mindfulness and meditation. But even if you do it for 5 minutes, clearing your head, getting some clear focus, quietening your mind before you start the day can be incredibly valuable. For some of you, it might be going for a run, if you're allowed out, depending on the territories and the countries you're living in, but having that space to clear and be connected with who you really are. So I'm going to talk about attitude. Now, there's a lot of great TED Talks on attitude and the power of attitude. And I do believe that if we focus on our attitude, then it can have potentially the biggest impact on us being able to work successfully in isolation. Now, the dictionary says that attitude is a mental and emotional entity that characterizes us. It's innate in who we are, and it's complex, and it's acquired through experiences. The experiences that we've had in our life and our work will form our attitudes. Ultimately, we choose how we respond to things. We can choose our attitude. So although we can't choose what's going on in our businesses right now, what's going on in our countries and our climate right now, what's going on with the people around us, we can actually totally own our attitude. Our attitudes create emotions in ourselves. And this is why I think at this time, there is a lot of fear, understandably, around what's going on. But knowing your emotions, tuning into your heart as well as your head, and dare I say it, tuning into your gut, or what I'd like to call your infinite brain, is really important at this time. But our attitude affects our emotion, which also triggers our perceptions of the world, how we view the world. So at the moment, are you viewing it as a threatening place? Are you worried about furloughed workers? Are you worried about what is going on for you? But our perceptions and how we view things, whether we view it in an optimistic or maybe a more negative light, some of you might say more realistic light, is it impacts our behaviors. So this is an opportunity to really think about, how are you behaving? And you can choose your behaviors if you understand your attitude. And our behaviors and how this impacts our personality, which we'll talk about now, and we'll also talk about it more when we talk about remote teams in the next session. But our behaviors have impacts on our beliefs and our thinking. We can choose our thoughts. So we can choose to see this as a current opportunity with huge threat. We can choose to see it as an opportunity to rethink our businesses, rethink our lives, and what we want to do and how we can set them up. But the one thing in life we've got complete control over is our attitude. So thinking about how we keep a positive attitude, because I know it's easy for me to say, and it's not always as easy to do, but good strategies some of you might find useful are keep a gratitude journal. Keep a diary every day of all the things that you're grateful for. I know you might be looking at all the things that are going wrong, or the clients you don't have, or the revenue that's stopped, or the impacts of family members that you maybe can't see, but think about what are the upsides. What's this allowing you to do? So, for some people, it's actually giving them more access to their families, and it's giving us opportunities to learn. It's giving us opportunities to rethink sometimes our businesses. So thinking of gratitude journals can be useful. For some of us, we're quite stimulated by music. So playing positive music while you're working, because at least if you're not sharing an office with someone, your choice of music, your choice of environment is for you to decide. So music can be helpful, maybe putting some inspirational quotes around that remind you of things that are important to you can be helpful. This was actually an idea from my daughter, is writing positive things that you appreciate about somebody. And she's written lots of little positive notes about me and what she values about me. And every day I open it and read one. Now, you could do this for other family members. You could do this for yourself. But even another idea is when we're out of this, and I know nobody knows how long this is going to take before we get out of it, but think about all the things that you really want to do afterwards, and maybe write those and put those in a bottle and revisit those. Or some of you might be quite visionary, so you might want to create a vision board, and it's an opportunity to choose pictures and images. You can do this online, or you can do this practically with a big board, and choose the images of the aspects of your life and the work that you want going forward. Some of you might review your business plans and look at new strategies for where you want to be. Some of you might have heard of Masaru Emoto. Now, he's a Japanese scientist who's done some wonderful experiments with water. And he was looking at the impact of our thoughts on water molecules. Now, there is some good resources on the internet, and TED talks about this. But what he looked at was how, if you think about our bodies are 70 to 80% water, the earth is 70 to 80% water. And actually our thoughts can influence water molecules. And he did experiments where he put water in different bottles, and he actually left water with different aspects. Thank you, wisdom, truth, angel, I love you, peace, you make me sick. And actually he looked at the molecular structure of the water after it had been exposed to these thoughts. Now, he actually analysed the ice, he turned the water to ice, and he actually analysed the molecular structure. And what you see here are the molecules of the water after they've been exposed to certain thoughts. Now, for some of you, this might seem quite wild and wacky, but if you look at it, when you look at that, you make me sick, actually, the molecules of water do not look healthy. When you say thank you, the molecules change. When you say I love you, look at the molecule. A good colleague of mine, Nikki Owen, did another exercise which you might want to try at home, and especially if you've got families who are bored, you might want to involve them, is get an apple, cut it in half. And I've got 2 jars. One says negative. Put one apple in the negative jar, and another jar is positive, and put the other side of the apple in the positive. Now, you need to make sure that you keep the jars far apart, but when you're feeling positive, go and stand by the jar. You might feel mad, stand by the jar and give it lots of positive thoughts. Tell the apple what you appreciate today, what you've been grateful for, what the opportunities are that this is presenting. And when you're feeling negative and bad, just let rip on the negative one. Now, some of you might be skeptical, but this is actually what happened after 2 weeks on an apple that Nikki worked on. So she gave lots of positive thoughts. This is an apple cut in half. And you might want to, if you're looking skeptical, you might want to try this at home. But give one side positive thoughts and one side negative thoughts, and look at the impact it has. Now, if you think about your body's made of 70 to 80% water. An apple's got a high percentage of water. If you're giving yourself positive thoughts, you're going to keep yourself well. Now, we're talking about resilience in a future module. If you're kind to your employees and your team members and giving positive feedback and giving support and recognizing people's strengths, you'll be enhancing their molecular structure. When you're negative to yourself, so you could be giving yourself self-destructive thoughts, thinking of what you could have been doing in your business before all this kicked off to minimize the impact that now it's creating. But if you're negative to yourself or you're negative to other people, look what you could be doing to yourselves. So I just want you to think about the impact of your attitude, because when we change our thoughts, we can change the world. Great quote by Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote the book Power of Positive Thinking. Great one to read if anyone hasn't. But I just want you to think about, so what habits could you use to stay positive over the coming months? You're going to have bad times. We're all human. But the more you can stay positive, our thoughts create opportunities, and our thoughts will create a way for us to move through some of this isolation, some of the challenges of remote working that maybe none of us would have thought about even a few weeks ago. So be honest, what thoughts have you got for yourself? The next thing I want to talk about is your brain power, because most of us use a tiny percentage of our brains. And there's a lot we can do over the coming weeks and months, and then this will set you up for success for the rest of your life, to activate more of our brain power. Now, neuroagility is a concept that we talk about a lot on our website, and you can find out a lot more information about this. Dr. Andre Vermeulen, who created this, is actually running a free webinar tomorrow if anyone's interested. And please email me and I can send you the sign-up details. But what we look at with someone's brain power is we all have a dominant side, a left or a right brain dominance. Now, if you're left brain dominant, when you're working in isolation, it's going to be really important that you're logical, you've got detail, you've got structure, or your employees or the people that work with you have got clear structure. You might have clear agendas, set times for meetings and team catch-ups. But people who are left brain dominant, like facts, planning, tend to be theoretical and more systematic. So if you feel that you're more logical, set yourself up for success working from home with a good, well-planned structure for your day and for your week, and support your colleagues to do it. But not everybody leaves on the left side. We all use both sides of our brain, but some of us lead on the left, some of us lead on the right. If you're more right brain dominant, and we call that the Gestalt brain or the holistic brain, you'll tend to think in a more creative, more spontaneous way and outside the box, so less structured and logical, but more thinking spontaneously about aspects. Now, if you're like that, then if your day is too structured and doesn't give you the opportunity to be more flexible, you might find that your productivity drops. Deloitte did a recent study on the effectiveness of people working from home, and overall, people are 24% happier and more productive actually working from home. And I would say if you're working with your brain power and allowing yourself to be logical, or allowing that creativity that you might need, and equally your colleagues might be different from you. And if you want to work out whether you're left or right brain, we've got a quick brain quiz on our website to have a look. If you want to do a detailed profile of your brain, that's also available. Also, some of us are more expressive when we use our brains, and some are receptive. So when we're stimulated by something, the electrochemical activity will actually go to the front of our brain first if we're expressive, or it will fire at the back of our brain first if we're receptive. Now, you probably know if you're someone that likes to talk things through, you like to express your ideas, and you build your ideas better when you're engaged with other people. Now, if you're in isolation and you've got a strong expressive way of being, don't be isolated for too long. Pick up the phone, do a Google Hangout, or if you use Microsoft Teams or Zoom, but you need to have regular connection, because your ideas will be better if you can bounce them off somebody else. Equally, if you're more receptive and you're someone that likes to take information in and absorb it, then you will probably enjoy periods of being isolated and being able to actually get on and not be interfered by somebody else, because you want that time to absorb information. The challenge, if you're very receptive, is don't bunker down. Don't get into perfectionist state and try and make everything perfect and spend too much time absorbing the information. If you're too expressive, don't ask too many opinions and spend too much time interacting and not getting on with what you need to do. It's finding a happy medium. You'll probably be aware that some of us are more visual, some of us are auditory, and some of us are kinesthetic. Now, again, you can get an assessment of this to work out the percentage of which you need visual stimulation and you learn visually. And I suspect quite a lot of people who are listening to this webinar have a degree of visual stimulation. So make sure that you are learning and you're connecting with people visually. You might want to learn through diagrams, textbooks, pictures, but you might be listening to TED Talks and doing things that give you that visual stimulation. Some of you might be more auditory, so actually prefer not to see too much visual and prefer to listen to sound, to music, to people's voices, and to pick up the phone. If you're like me, you might be quite strongly kinesthetic, and if you're kinesthetic, you need to move around. So don't sit in your home office, wherever that might be, for too long periods. Get up every 20 minutes and have a bit of a move, because you'll actually absorb your information better and you'll be a lot more productive. The thing I think it's really important for you to be aware of around your brain is that many people are quite stressed right now, understandably, with the changes going on. From a brain point of view, when we do experience stress, if we're not sleeping very well or we're feeling confused or overwhelmed, our non-dominant side of our brain switches off. So if you're naturally more logical and left brain dominant, you'll continue to fire up the neurochemical activity on the left side of your brain. So you'll become more logical, but you'll actually lose access to being creative, to thinking outside the box. Equally, if you're right brain, you'll become even more creative and thinking outside the box and even less logical. Now, there is an opportunity here to become a lot more neuroagile, be a lot more flexible and using both sides of the brain. And there are ways we can do that by becoming more brain fit. So using cross-lateral exercises. So even if you're sitting at your office, at home, or wherever you are, is crossing the midline of your body. I'm going to show you a video in a minute, so you don't have to listen to my voice for too much longer, around how you could become more brain fit. And there are lots of extra videos on our website. It's really important from a brain point of view to boost your resilience, and we'll do a special webinar on that. One thing I'm noticing on the people I've been profiling their brains is a lot of people aren't sleeping well enough. It's the quality and the quantity of our sleep. We need to get into the deep delta brain waves of sleep. We sleep in 90-minute cycles, and ideally, each of us needs between 7 and 9 hours of quality sleep. Now's an opportunity to make sure that you're refueling your brain power by having the sleep you need, also the movement, because that stimulates our endorphins and it encourages the dendritic growth, so the connection between the cells in our brains. Attitude, I've said, is very important, but also our nutrition. So eating healthy omega-3s, making sure that you're having enough protein, because that's great for your brain, and also plenty of water is really important. So a quick break from my speaking and an opportunity to get a bit more brain fit. I'd encourage you to join in with this, because this is an opportunity. It's only 30 seconds to boost your brain power and use both sides of your brain. So hope you enjoy it. There's lots more opportunities to do that on the website if anyone wants to try them, but they're all quite short ones. And Andre is also creating a new one for doing exercises at your desk. So the next thing I'd like to look at is your personality. Now, some of you might have done personality profiling, but don't worry if you haven't. But I think it's important to really think about what your preferences are. How do you prefer to work? And equally understanding the personality preferences and ways of working of colleagues, especially when you're working remotely. We use Insight's personality profiling often, and there's an opportunity to get a profile on our website if you're interested, but that uses colors to understand how your personality works. But for lots of people, they're aware of, are you introvert or extrovert? Some of you might have done Myers-Briggs or MBTI, but for many people, they get their energy from being introvert. So they go inside to get their energy. Now, if you're someone with an introvert preference, this opportunity to be quiet, to be thoughtful, to have an opportunity to reflect and go inward could be perfect for you when you're working from home. But just don't retreat into yourself too much, but it will give you energy. If you're more extrovert preference, you will need to talk, you will want to get involved, be gregarious and flamboyant, and you'll need an opportunity to be stimulated by people. So for you, that connection with your colleagues and other people will be even more important right now. I think we can't afford to under communicate at the moment. So think about, are you introversion, extroversion? Jung talks about some people think first and some people feel first. So if you think, you tend to go on task. What do I need to achieve? So if you feel that, and if equally, if you're feeling preference, you will go focusing on the relationship and who do I want to work with? Who can I connect with? So if you're a thinking preference person, it's a good idea to write down all the things that you want to achieve in the day, in the week. What are the tasks that you need to be connected with to keep you going and keep you productive? If you're a feeling person, then who are the relationships? What's the connection you need? Be honest with yourself about who to connect with, who stimulates you, and who do you need to help you achieve the things that you need to achieve while you're working from home. I think it's important to know your personality needs when you're in isolation. So if you are someone who's quite extrovert preference and you like to get your stimulation from other people, especially if you're an extroverted thinker, which we would say is fiery red energy, you're someone that will thrive on focus. So you need some fast actions, you need some quick wins. So make sure that you're doing some of those things. A sense of control. So what can you control? And what decisions can you make? If you're extrovert, but more of a feeling preference, which is a sunshine yellow, then you'll feed off interaction. So communication is important, but having options and optimism is also important. If you're someone who's more introvert preference, and if you're more introverted and thinking, then it's the cool blue. You need information. Make sure you've got all the information you need to work productively. Structure, logic, and feedback on the way forward. And if you're still introverted, but more of an introverted feeling preference, it's the earth green. Personal contact is important. You want to build trust, and we'll talk about that more in the next webinar on working with teams. But trust is important, sincerity is important. So the personal touch, a personal email, being connected with the people that you value will be really important. And I couldn't possibly finish this webinar without talking about the importance of motivation. While we're working in isolation, our motivation is key. It's a fire from within. If someone else tries to light the fire under you, chances are it'll burn very briefly. So just as much as we can control our attitude, we can also take total responsibility for our motivation. We can choose to have energy and fuel ourselves, or we can choose to allow the circumstances to put our fire out. What I'd like to suggest to you is that you use this time to understand what motivates you. And again, there's more information on the website, but some people are driven by relationships and that lights their fire. For some people, it's achievement and getting things done. And for other people, it's sense of growth. It's a sense of what's next, what could be possible. So once you've got your head out of the current chaos and you do have the bandwidth to start thinking about the future, if you're driven by growth, it's a real opportunity to think about, when you get out of this, where do you want to go with your business, with your life, with your work? If you're achievement orientated, it's very important to think about, what are the things I want to achieve? What's on my to-do list, and tick them off and get that sense of making your goals and hitting your goals and breaking them down into steps. And if you're relationship orientated, make sure that however isolated you are, that you are still connecting and reaching out to people. So our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's a quote by Marianne Williamson, and it's a lot longer than that. But I just want to get you to think, we spoke about knowing yourself. If you can really understand yourself and accept how brilliant you are, you can use your mindset, your brain power, your personality, and your motivation to help you through these times. There will be difficult times, and for many people, I'm sure they're difficult right now. But our deepest fear is that we're inadequate. We are not inadequate. Our human beings, we are so capable of achieving so much. So don't be afraid of your power. Think about what you can do, not what you can't. So some quick things. You might want to get feedback on your strengths. You might want to email a few people that know you well and ask them to send you 3 bullet points of the 3 things they most value about you. And maybe you do it for them. And look at those strengths every day and remind yourself of what you're brilliant at. You might want to keep a gratitude journal. Think about the music you're playing or the environment that you're working in. Create a vision board for what this is going to look like after this. Might have a go at the brain quiz or do some brain fitness exercises or get some more sleep. You might think about, what are your real needs? What is important to you? What are your preferences? How do you like to communicate? And how much communication do you want? And you might want to think about how you map your motivation. If you want more resources, the website is www.fullpotentialgroup.com, or you can email me directly at carol@fullpotentialgroup.com. Very happy to answer any questions now. So if you want to take off your mutes, very happy to talk about anything. And the next session that we'll be running next week is harnessing a remote team. So if you'd like to join that or invite anyone to join that, you'd be very, very welcome. So I'm just curious, and I've been speaking a lot, but has anyone got any questions, or do you like to type anything in the text box that we can help you with? We will be sending a recording of this. So I know I was speaking quite quickly. There's be an opportunity to listen to it back. And equally, if you want to share it with others, feel free. But we're very keen to support people. I know isolation, we all take this in different ways. And it's not just about the practicalities of things, but how can we support our mental state, our emotional state, the best we can. I think everyone's being very quiet. Can you point us in the right direction of exercises we can do between now and next Wednesday's session? You may well want to have a look at doing some brain fitness exercises, and there are plenty of examples of that on our website. Or you might want to do the brain quiz. It's a very short quiz, which is free. Equally, you might really want to think about keeping that gratitude journal, or putting all your positive thoughts in a bottle and reminding yourself of them. You might want to do the Apple experiment and share your bottles with us in the next couple of weeks' time. That thinking about what can you do to keep yourself motivated and keep yourself going, but equally, how can you support everybody else? So thank you very much. And someone said, can we add another topic? How do we transition back into the new world? We might well add that one on to the end of these webinars. But thank you very much for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.